We're on the Inferno cast because we are all stranded at home. The gyms are closed. We can't really go train. We are bored out of our mind. And today I'm going to be talking to one of my best friends, Justin Rader, who we have been friends much longer than I thought. I was actually cruising through Facebook last night with Hula, and I found a picture of us hanging out at a tournament back in like 2011 or 12. And I just thought, no way. So, as we go forward, though, Justin, to give us a little bit of your background of where you started training, like if it was in wrestling or martial arts, karate, taekwondo, jiu jitsu, how you found BJJ, and then kind of what your career looked like in a little quick synopsis.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad is actually the one that got me started, and even before the martial arts aspect, I actually started training in gymnastics. And
Really?
my dad, and this is just to give you some background about him, was like, well, you know what? If we're going to be paying for classes, let's try to find the highest, most credible, knowledgeable instructors, and then we'll just never miss practice because that was, he saw the value in it. So I actually was training at the same gymnastics center as Shannon Miller forever
Oh
ago.
yeah. She was like an Olympian, right?
Yeah, from out here in Edmond, Oklahoma at Dynamo Gymnastics. And so that's where my journey really began. And my coaches there were like just so super impressed. I was between the ages of 3 and 4, and they were just so super impressed with me. And they had a fun nickname for me, which was Little Tank. And that's what they called
That
me
makes sense.
back then.
That
And
makes sense because man, it's like even now, like man, you're just like so compact and tight that hard
exactly.
to
Yeah.
bulk
Well, my
anything.
mom always got a big kick out of it, and she loves that story. And then so when I turned 4, that was when my dad got me started in martial arts, and I started with Taekwondo very first initially, a little bit like a month or two probably before wrestling. And I trained at a place out here in Edmond, Oklahoma called Poo's Taekwondo, and I did that for the better part of almost 10 years.
Now,
And
see, that's something a lot of people don't know about is that you actually have a black belt in Taekwondo,
right,
which
yeah,
is yeah,
what we call junior black.
yeah.
Back, yes, yeah. So I did that for like nearly a decade, and then at the same time, a couple months later, I got started in wrestling. And to me, as a 4-year-old kid, I didn't know any better. But I actually wrestled on the same team as Johnny Hendricks. In fact,
Oh, really?
Yeah, Johnny Hendricks' father was my first wrestling coach, Kevin
Oh,
Hendricks.
that's cool.
Yeah, so and he was a 2-time NCAA Division I national champion himself, and so that was
Yeah.
like, well, and especially being in Edmond, Oklahoma, like it wasn't close by. It was like probably a good 30-minute drive across town because I actually lived in Oklahoma City at the time, and that's where I've lived pretty much my entire life is Oklahoma City. But it was about but it was worth it to my father to have me training there under someone of that kind of knowledge and caliber. And so that was really cool. And then I wrestled all through high school, all the way up till I was about 18. Well, actually 18. I wrestled all the way through senior in high school, and then I stopped wrestling. And I had this, and we can get to that later if you want, like why I decided not to wrestle in college.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah. We'll get to that. But
yeah, and so I decided not to wrestle in college. Which is a good life lesson story. And I just stuck with jujitsu. I started training jujitsu when I was 12, and I
okay.
still today.
What how old were you when you got your BJJ black belt?
I was 24.
24. Okay, man. And see, that's one thing that like in America, it's just now prevalent where for so long, somebody getting a black belt that was an American, man, like you're already old.
Oh, right.
You're already past your prime because it took somebody that had usually been doing martial arts for a lifetime already to get curious to be like, hey, what's this jujitsu stuff that people are talking about? And they get involved with like seminars and finding people that would train it. And so by the time a lot of people found it, they were already kind of like a little bit older or kind of past
Right.
the competitive prime where, I mean, because your goal is to be like, if I'm a black belt by 22, 23, you've got 7 years in the adult division to just be an animal,
Yep.
and there's a lot of guys in their 30s that are doing great, but this new generation of kids, they're the ones that are going to be beasts because you got kids that are going to be 18, 19, 20. They're basically full-time athletes already, and they're at the black belt level. I mean, even right now, like Nicky Ryan, what you're seeing with him, like he's out of people to grapple. It's like, man, I need a different colored belt so I can go grapple better people. And It's just the new revolution of jiu-jitsu is definitely coming. Real quick, so my banner, which
Yes, it's
is pretty legit.
fantastic. It was the first thing I said when we got on.
Yeah, so we got to talk about the banner because anybody that knows Rader knows that he's a nerd. Anybody knows me knows that I'm a nerd, and most of us are.
Why
And
we
I've
get
been trapped in the house. Do what?
I said it's why we get along.
Yeah, exactly. It's why we get along so well. So I've been trapped in the house. I've been doing tons of computer work and all that. And so this morning I got up extra early because I have not been sleeping much. And I was like, you know what? I have a crazy idea. So this banner was given to me. It's been a few years ago, and it's huge. Like, I mean, you can see up here where like it connects. I mean, it's huge. So I got this strapped up in the house. Hula's not home. She has no idea that I've done this. So that's going to be fun whenever she comes home. But I was just like, I got this huge banner. I can never put it anywhere, use it. It's rolled up. It's been in the nerd room for like ever. I was like, I'm going to put it up today because I got Rader on and we're going to have fun and be nerds together. So I thought that was hilarious. And I knew you would have your nerdum in tow.
Yeah, well, that was kind of like, a big part of my martial arts journey too or whatnot. My absolute favorite #1 TV show when I was a kid was the Ninja Turtles, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, I'm telling you, that's like, we were raised up on that. And it just, it's a part of my childhood for sure. But yeah, I was like, I ended up with this thing. What better use than to use it for our fun little Inferno cast thing? To have some fun there. Okay, so now, interesting stories. There's a lot of growth as an athlete and as a coach. And I think that that's kind of what brought us together as friends because we didn't know each other when we were on like the tournament circuits and things of that nature. And I kind of bridged the gap and our communication increased because I kind of started capturing moments at these grappling tournaments and sending them to you, which, not our finest moment, but they were learning experiences and completely validated where it's all like, you got to do something whenever, things are a little bit crazy and weird. So, do you recall the pictures that I would send to you?
Kind of, yeah.
So usually, here's what would happen is Rader would be out there coaching his students, and something would happen. Referee would make a poor call. Table would be like looking off in a la la land, putting points on the wrong side.
Again, I was always validated.
Yeah. Always. Hey, there's many of like a lot of times, especially in those days, we just had so many people that are trying to put on tournaments, but they just didn't have enough people that actually knew the rules. Like they were trying to do a good job, they just didn't know a lot of the rules. So everybody kind of grew through this. Well, your competitive juices would get pumping and then you would, get excited. And before you know it, like I'm taking pictures of you like out on the mats, like arms flailing crazy, yelling at table people, trying to figure out what's happening and fixing a solution. So that was kind of our bridge where I would text you a picture of you out there. And it took about 3 before you figured out like, oh man, this is a consistent thing, why do you keep sending me these pictures of me being crazy out there? But it was frustrating in the early days because you were competing on such a high level so early in the revolution of like jiu-jitsu, like in the Mid-South. I mean, because I can remember, one of the first few grappling tournaments I went to, like all the referees were blue belt, white belt, maybe 1 or 2 high ranks. And when these guys were starting these tournaments back in the day that have all disappeared, like that's one thing I can validate is almost all the incidents that I know I personally was involved with you, most of those tournaments aren't even around. And it kind of makes sense because those were some crazy times. But they would try to get people to be involved that just didn't know enough. And you were out there competing in Abu Dhabi World Championships. When was the first World Championship that you won?
The first one I competed in 2007.
2007, man. 2007, most people didn't even know what BJJ was.
Exactly.
Especially in the Mid-South. Like, I mean, because in 2007, that was right before we went to Brazil. I was a lowly blue belt when you were winning world championships in the black belt division. Yep, I was a fancy pants
I won
blue.
my first world title in 2007 as a purple.
Oh, that was the purple belt victory. Okay, that's my bad. I was thinking it is the first black belt.
2007, brown in 2009, and black in 2010 and 13.
Okay. That was my bad because I was like, dang, you've been a black belt a while. Okay. So 2007, you won worlds as a purple belt, where I'm dinging around with a blue belt, and definitely was not a world champion. But that's part of it. Because that was like the middle of my MMA time. Like, so I was being an MMA fighter, being tough guy, cage fighter, which, that's what it's all about, right? If you just fight in the cage.
Yes.
Yeah. So definitely different trajectories. And with that level of competition and experience, I mean, like the IBJJF handbook that you guys had to understand and know the rules. I mean, it was 20 something pages. Now
Yeah.
it's like 30 something pages. Rule changes every year. Got to go to rules meetings. It's a thing. And I just think that your experience it was so far ahead of where everybody else was at. And me knowing you personally, because you're a very committed person. And you go back talking about your dad, who's, just such a sweet guy, but he's also a man of excellence. And I
Yeah.
see it in his kids, because even like knowing some of your siblings, and that's what I've always known about you is you're a person of excellence that looks at things of, if you're going to participate, you're going to give it 150%, know every single rule, understand all the caveats, and nothing else exists.
Well, my mom always used to tell me, my mom would never let me settle for less than my best. And I can't tell you how many times she told me or told that to me back when I was like, a kid, so it was really both my mom and my dad.
For sure. And I've got some, and I've got to spend way more time with your mom, and I got some fun mom stories because, like we joke, like I'm the other Rader kid now. But, understanding you as an athlete though, because you are so hyper focused. Like that is one thing, is when you get focused on something, everything goes away. And I could see that because whenever I first met you and I would see the frustration, I would shrug my shoulders and be like, man, what's the big deal? Well, I wasn't competing on a world championship level. I wasn't trying to build up a team. I wasn't trying to like be the best of the best. Like we're going to tournaments, having fun, seeing our friends. This is cool. The refs don't know a lot. It's going to go either way. I was pretty laissez-faire back then because I'm like, man, I'm a blue belt. I got like 10 students. 2 of us go to this tournament in Texas. I just wasn't thinking on that level, because for me, it was always about MMA, where when I was at an MMA show, then that part of me would come out where I was just like, what are the rules? You can do this, you can't do that. And it was a whole different thing. But for jiu-jitsu, it was like, oh, this is fun. But when you're looking at it as a professional, as where you were at, now that I know you, I now understand the strife, because for you, that was the professional level, even if it was a local tournament, because that's what you were aspiring to do. It was like, man, I want to be a professional at this. So when we go to the small tournaments, I got to run the same play, and my
Right.
students need to run the same play. And so like now I understand the frustration, because it's like basically going to the Olympic trials and them running a different rule set and doing things incorrectly, and you're like, this is supposed to be getting me ready for the Olympics.
Right.
You got to do the trials the same way. And so now like I really understand a lot more of how much it was affecting you, because my own perspective is, honestly, I was just thinking too small at the time, especially about jiu-jitsu. And so now that's expanded, and and a lot of that's coming, and a lot of that's expansion, has been part of my coaches and friends, and you as well, because when you're around people that are competing and training at a world level, like your perspective on the world and training and the methodology, it's just different. And,
Right.
and there's success leaves clues. So, I mean, I've really learned a lot from just little nuances that you'll kind of mention or passively joke about or something, that when I look back, I'm like, man, that's a really important detail that it does matter. So, and I tell that story of when we first met back in 07. I mean, when we met in 12, because you had, went to Worlds in 07, and then you won again in 09 at Brown, right?
Yeah, I won a no-gi. I won purple belt gi in 2007.
Yeah.
I got bronze in gi at Brown in 8. I won no-gi in 2009. And then 2 months after getting my black belt in 2010, I won my first world title in no-gi.
Okay. That was my question, was your first black belt world title. So coming from that level of competition, if you had to give somebody 2 pieces of advice to compete at that level, what would it be? It was like, man, I know it's a tough one, especially turning it down to 2. But if you had a kind of big idea and be like, man, the 2 main things that are kind of the guiding light at that level of competition.
You have to believe in yourself, number one. You have to believe in yourself each and every single time you walk out there. And kind of like you said, like, You know, every single time I walked, even if it wasn't the world championships, like I needed to perform, you know, at, you know, basically always giving my best,
Yeah.
because I'm going to perform that way at all times, you know, and if I'm giving my best, then I can learn the most from the experience. So I have to always believe in yourself, which was for me and and every athlete there, everyone's journey is different. Everything that they need is different. But for me, it was believing in myself. And once I really started to do that and really started to buy into that, big, even bigger things started to happen, you know, that. And then also, you know, you have to and I didn't realize this until, you know, I've gone through all the experiences I've gone through, but, you know, you have to take a really hard look at the people around you. And
Always.
you have to have, you know, good people around you who are very supportive, you know, of, if that's really your goal, is to, you know, win world titles, the people you've got around you, man, it's huge.
Yeah. So would you say that the confidence believing in yourself, would you say that that could be a skill that you have to work on and develop?
Yep. 100%.
How would you, if you were going to advise a blue belt, purple belt that, you know, local guy doing jiu-jitsu, training at the gym, having a good time, aspirations of being a world champion, if you were going to give them some advice, you know, that was like, how do you develop that skill? What would you do to kind of get them started?
There's only one way to develop that skill, and it's trial by fire. You have to,
So,
you have to have the experience. You have to have the experiences. I have lost about every single which way you could possibly imagine to
yeah.
lose, you know, from
So,
getting knocked
so you feel that the having the confidence of being the athlete is going to be a direct reflection of the amount of immersion that they are in the competition circuit.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Yeah. Because I mean, I agree with that because it's adjusting your new normal. Perfect example, like when you bring somebody into the gym and it's their first day in class and you go out and hold them under full mount and, you know, you lay on them in side mount, their perspective on that day is like, this is the most painful, excruciating thing in my entire life. Like, I don't know how I ever did that. Oh man, I'm just, you know, I had claustrophobia. I was getting squeezed. It was painful. And then over time, you change that definition to where that is no longer the case, where it's like, oh yeah, man, being under side mount, full mount, like it's not that experience again because they become familiar with it and it becomes the new norm. And
Right.
so would you say that you're trying to move the new norm as a competitor to where you feel at home in the pit? You feel
Yep.
at home watching the scoreboard. Like that is just so familiar to you that it becomes no different than when you're just at the gym training with the guys.
Yep, 100%. And even when I do those things, like I got to a point, like, you know, and I learned a lot of this without real direct communication or really understanding what I was like it wasn't directly communicated. Hey, you know, we're getting on this level. But my wrestling coach, Andy Howington, the one I wrestled for from 7th grade all throughout high school, he's the one that really taught me kind of these things, and I couldn't learn. I mean, I can communicate it now. Like there were just certain things. It was like,
Yeah.
boom, you went out of bounds, and first thing you did was you ran back to the center. And that's, you know, playing a mental warfare game with not just the athlete, but also the ref, that athlete's coach, you know, as well as just me and my own coach understanding what's going on, you know. So we would run back to the center. Other things we would do as we ran back to the center, we took 2 quick glances. All right. We glanced at the clock and the score. All right. And then we glanced back at the coach in case he had any feedback for us. Deep breath, boom, ready to go. Those are those things. I don't even think about those things. I just did them because they told me to do them. And now I can actually communicate, like, you know, hey, you know, and my kids know, I make my kids recite this to me. Like, boom, you go and that's just one instance scenario of some of the things that I make them recite back to me. But I mean, they know, okay, look up, check the clock, check the score, look at me real quick, boom, get back in position, let's go.
So now this goes into another piece of the game because I mean, I agree. Building confidence is because it's psychological. Like, you know, you got to be able to perform. They always say that, you know, amateurs can perform well, professionals perform well consistently.
Yep.
And so, and I think that goes back to that immersion of, you know, just with that competitive immersion. Now, the next piece, psychological warfare. How much of that do you think plays into the tournament performance part of it? You know, like what kind of advantage do you feel like that can give you?
More than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
More than
So,
credit for.
So what are a couple low-key tactics that you've seen in the past, used in the past, that you feel like, man, that moment paid dividends later?
And it's so funny too, is like those moments they have like you almost can't even you can't see their effect until after the fact, so like my
Right.
wrestling, that was the first thing, we went out of bounds, we were the first one back in the center, and I'd be jumping, hopping, raring to go or whatnot. That breaks people. Sometimes you have to fake it too. There are plenty of times, I was in a tournament once, and I had a bad weight cut. A lot of you guys probably know Mackenzie Dern. I
Yep.
competed against her father, Megaton,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Oh, I remember this. I was there.
yeah,
I was there for this.
I barely. I mean, dude, Megaton has some like crazy Tomonagi sweeps from his
Man,
guard.
he was all over you with that sweep game.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
mean, that
What had
guy was,
8 or 9 advantages?
yeah. I
Yeah, because
mean, it was just impressive because I remember when you first went out with him, I was like, oh man, I was like, because I love Megaton, man. I mean,
yeah,
I've been
everybody.
a fan of him forever. Met him years ago before I even knew he was a big deal, and then later on, I was like, oh man, you're a genius. So, whenever you went out there, I was just thinking, I was like, I love Megaton, but man, Rader's takedown, top pressure, like, oh man, 20 something years old animal is probably going to catch up with him. And he played really, really well. I was so shocked.
Yeah. So I had a really bad weight cut at that
Hmm.
tournament. In fact, I had to go out, I believe, in the parking lot earlier and go run and cut weight before my matches began. And so I had one match before that, and I pulled off, like a really unorthodox jump, flying guilloutine in the
Yeah,
gi.
big surprise.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's just not something people see a lot in the gi. So I got a real pretty easy, quick win. No problem. I went out there against Megaton. And I had trained with Megaton actually a couple times before that. So I was familiar with
Yeah,
his takedown Tomonagi, but I was not ready for his guard Tomonagi,
yeah,
which is a whole nother thing, is being able to prepare, adapt for things that you are unaware of. But so like I had a bad weight cut, but I went out there and I did get my first takedown, but he actually did sweep me too. I actually won that match with a sweep. I had to pull a page out of my one of my students. Her name is Coach Sarah. I had to pull a page out of her book, and so I used spider guard, and it was ugly. Like, but I got him over enough that I was able, like,
to come up on your, yeah.
yeah, come up and kind of double leg him down or whatnot with like 10 seconds left, and
No, I remember that because one thing I remember observing was you looked relentless. Like,
oh
I mean, you look like you were just on. So for you to tell me you had a tough weight cut and you were feeling it, like you sold it, man. You sold it
oh
because I,
and that was something my wrestling coach Andy Howington taught me to do. It was just like look, like that other person, and I came to know this. Like, dude, if I was spent, there's a real good chance that other person's spent too, But so
absolutely.
I remember this because I had found a way, and I, to be honest, like when I stood up, I wanted to throw up. I could barely stand. My legs were shaking. I gave everything I had to beat Megaton, and that was the semifinals. I
Yeah.
still had a match in the finals against world champion Pablo da Silva Santos, and he was sitting right there watching me. And so I got up and I looked him right in the eyes the whole time as the ref raised my hand, still looking him in the eyes, walked off the mat, and I sold. I had to fake it the whole time because I wanted nothing to just throw up and fall over. And I
Yeah.
walked off and I just stared at him the whole time until I got to where I walked underneath the bleachers, all right, trash can, threw up a little bit, laid down, and was like, gosh dang it, like, I've got 20, 30 minutes to prepare for the finals, go out and do it again. And luckily I had enough time to recover. But those are the kind of things because he was watching the whole time. He was not looking just for my technique. He was like, hey man, this game, like if I had like got up and I was on my knees and I ran right to the trash can first thing, dude, he's
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh man, I'm gonna get this guy in the finals. He's already spent, blah, 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 blah. But no, now he's got to be like, he's got to respect. I love the like the concept, like, don't fight names, but dude, you got to, So I
Yeah.
made him
Yeah.
name. That's the one from Gladiator. I love it when he says when Juba tells Maximus, he says, "You have a great name, he has to kill your name before he kills you. And it's no different, So I made, instead of giving my name away right at the beginning, like that, run it over, blah, and like throwing up into the trash can or whatnot. I looked Pablo right in the eyes. Okay. And like I said, my legs were shaking or whatnot. You couldn't see that underneath my gi, which is awesome.
Right.
I mean, my legs were jello. Like I could barely stand, and I just stared at him.
You're using the mental game, trying to leverage it of like, if it can
100%.
buy me one moment.
Yeah. So
that transfers to
sorry. Yeah. When I enter my finals match with him, then he's got to be like, he doesn't know that I'm already like, suck, like on my last legs. Like he's got to go out there, respect Justin Rader. Oh my God. Like I got to pull guard ASAP, as opposed to, hey, maybe I might even be able to take him down.
Right. Absolutely. And, so like in MMA, a lot of times, because some people may not know that you fought MMA several times. MMA, a lot of times, that was a discussion mentioned very often, was breaking somebody's will.
Yeah.
It was just, trying to suck the fight out of them, or just, if you can get them to just doubt themselves a little bit, have a moment of insecurity, buy into their own mental dialogue a little bit. Man, I do feel tired. Man, this guy is strong. Man, he is fast. And so when you apply that to BJJ, what aspects of the game are you trying to leverage? Is it, the physicality, the takedown, the pressure, the speed, or is it all of it?
All of it. All of it, all times.
Which, I mean, that's your reputation too.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And my coach, Andy Howington, he's the one that taught me how to be that way, and I mean, every single moment, we'd walk off, like if we walked off and the first thing we did, like we were walking over after a match, just put our hands on our knees. I mean, dude, he would all but smack us in the back of the head and just be like, what are you doing? Like everyone in here can see, you go find a place where no one can see you, and then if you absolutely need to do that or whatnot, but like, dude, he wouldn't even let us do that in practice. If we were running sprints at the end, boom, someone's hands on their knees, more sprints,
Yeah.
I mean, he beat it out of, all of us. And I mean, I trained with him, he was my coach for like 7-8 years, trust me, it didn't take, like we had a duel against a real good team back then in Chickasha, Oklahoma. And we got beat like 64-6. And dude, we ran and ran and ran. We spent like the whole next practice was just sprints. Did you ever see that miracle where he made them go back out on the ice and he ran? That my coach did that to us. We probably in practice for about an hour and 15 minutes, and he did nothing but make us run sprints or whatnot. And he never actually said what it was for, but like we knew, because like we had gotten our tails kicked the night before, and he was so unhappy with how people just like kind of like gave up just because it was chickish. And it not like it wasn't even because like, they were just better wrestlers than us. So people like kind of like were already, you could tell they were already defeated before they went out there. And he was like, that will absolutely never be our team ever again.
Right. And that goes back to mental toughness. And, that kind of takes me to something else is, so when it goes to mental toughness, what was the toughest match that you ever had where when you were just like, man, I almost just want to like just give up to get out of this, and then you rally the troops. But, because as a competitor and as a fighter, whether it be BJJ, MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, boxing, there's always those emotional moments during a fight where it's just like, oh man, I'd rather be anywhere than here right now. And then a second later, you're like, I'm going to win and be the ultimate champion of the world. It's so volatile. I mean, I've had those moments. In my life where I'm in there and I'm like, why am I doing this? And the next second I'm like, I hope the ref doesn't stop this, and I'm going to beat you up till you. It's just kind of silly. So if you had to pick one of your matches that you feel was the true test, not technically, the true test mentally, where you were just so beat up, so exhausted, that was just really hard on you, that, oh man, was just tough to rally the troops.
It actually and I can give you one, perhaps from each sport, because I have a couple different defining moments in my life. My very first one would be back when I wrestled in high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had an abysmal freshman year. I didn't, and there are a lot of different things, and factors that take place when you start talking about divisions, which I feel very strongly about because of my own experience and progression. And we can definitely get into that, in a minute if you want, because that's like a 45-minute rant. And I'll sum up about 8 or do my best to. But I was in high school, and like I said, I had an abysmal freshman year. Like I developed kind of later, like I was going out there against, sophomores, juniors, seniors. And I mean, I was getting absolutely just
a little bit of a late bloomer.
But I was getting outclassed on like an athletic, strength, level. It really wasn't like I wasn't skilled. I just could not handle the strength that I was up against. My skill wasn't enough. And I don't even know if my skills had been like the best that they could have been where I was at my freshman year, and, where I, how my body developed. I don't know that all the skill in the world would have made it that much more, pleasurable an experience or whatnot. Like, so I had an abysmal freshman year. My sophomore year, I came out, and I did nothing but work. I quit football. I used to be on the football team. I quit everything, and I just 100% devoted to wrestling. As soon as my freshman year was over, I dabbled in, freestyle and Greco. I went right back to, training Jiu Jitsu, but I also spent a couple days training, like strictly training wrestling with my assistant wrestling coach at the time. And we would do that a couple times a week, where we'd meet up for about an hour or whatnot. I mean, I was doing everything. I was putting in all the time, because like I didn't like my freshman record was, I think, like 6-6. I mean, it was god awful.
Where did it intersect with your sophomore year for this match?
So my preseason was like starting to like I went 8-7 in preseason, and it was looking just like the year before. And I was like, man, like I was really starting to contemplate, like maybe I really just suck. Maybe I'm really just not very good, but a match from my freshman year, I went up against this kid who was undefeated, and I let his record mess with my head. So in 8th grade, I lost to him because of that. In 9th grade, my freshman year, my last match in junior high, I went out there with the mindset of, you know what, no matter what, I don't care, win or lose, doesn't, like, I didn't even care about that anymore or whatnot. Like, cause my 8th grade year, I lost to him because of right here. It wasn't because he was that much better than me. I went out there and lost because his record said 43-0 and mine said 30-3, and I let that mess with my head. So I went out there and he beat me 10-1 in my, when we were in 8th grade. And he also got outstanding wrestler. So like in wrestling, they give like, among all the wrestlers, whatnot, like they give an outstanding wrestler of the tournament. He got that award for beating me. And you just like, adding insult to injury already. Well, I came back the next year. I was like, you know what? Even if he beats me again, because like he beat me down that year before 10-1. So even if no matter what, he's never going to want to wrestle me again. And he's certainly, I'm going to make it so bad. He's going to look so terrible that he won't win outstanding wrestler again. Not 2 years ago, not to me. And I actually went out there and beat him. And so like that was a pretty defining moment for me, but like I said, I relapsed, like my freshman year, was awful, so I came back my sophomore year and it started to look a lot like my freshman year. And then, I had a match against the #1 ranked kid from Chickasha, again in 4A. He was one of their, couple time state champions. And he was the #1 ranked kid. And so we were 3A back then. He was in 4A, So not only was it like a higher divisional class or whatnot, he was also the state champion of that higher school divisional class, And like everyone that competed against this kid lost, I went out there with the same mindset, like no matter what, like I'm just going to bring what I can the entire time. And in the craziest match, probably one of the craziest matches he's ever been in a score that's not really reflective of high-level matches, but I beat him 13-11 because I made it a brawl. I made it a slugfest, and it came down to right here. And I just put it all on the line because I just never stopped going at him.
Relentless.
Just winning and losing I went out there really just to make him look bad. I'm really out there to make him suck.
So whenever I was still fighting, I always call it going down in a ball of flames. I would just hit this thing where I was like, you know what? Win, lose, or draw, we're just going down in a ball of flames. Somebody's going to be entertained, and I would just let it go. And I remember this one MMA fight where I fought up in weight, and the guy had some more experience, and I mean, I was just so much smaller. And, man, it was so tough. And I remember after round 1, I was like, forget it, man. I'm just going for broke. And I ended up getting decked right in the face, knocked me down into the cage. I mean, like, Dring left to go get the smelling salts because he thought I was out. Comes back, my hand was raised. And he's like, what happened? And he's like, he armbarred him, man. I don't know how. And when Dring came in, I looked at him and I said, Coach, people are talking, but I don't know what they're saying. Because I was so out of it, man, because I got hit hard. But I know what you mean as far as like when you go in, because it's not that you got to be careful throwing caution to the wind, especially as an athlete having to be calculated in a combat sport. But that relentless attitude is really more of like what you're saying, where it's like, I'm not going to let hesitation or fear of what might go wrong catch me, because that usually misses your moment. Because whenever you think about what could happen, you usually miss the moment for it to work anyway.
Yep. So we're not throwing caution to the wind per se. Like I'm still wrestling smart. I'm still doing like everything I know how to do. I'm giving my absolute very best or whatnot. But it was just like I used to get crushed by the cripple of like, oh my gosh, if I lose, what are people gonna say?
Correct.
Stuff or whatnot. I let that play with my head. When I was like, you know what, screw what everybody else says. I'm coming out here. It's you and me. And by God, if we both have to go down in a ball of flames, we will. And caution to the wind. Like I'm still wrestling smart, but like I'm not worried about winning or losing right now. You're the one that I love the quote from Rorschach from Watchmen. When are you going to understand? You're not locked in here I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Yeah, that's 2 references. You only get 3. Don't use them all up.
Right? Exactly.
So
exactly.
Here's what I think that like when you talk about it, it makes me think about where you get focused on winning the moment instead of winning the match. Right. Where like your time schedule is so much shorter, or or just you're so focused on that match, you're not thinking about the next match, you're not thinking about the next month, because sometimes there's a strategy, like with kicking the legs for round 3, but you just shorten down your thinking term to where it's like, I need to win what's important right now, that win principle. So now in BJJ, what was the match in BJJ? Who was it in BJJ that was the real test?
Man, there are just so many to choose from. God.
And then Justin had a question about some rituals, and we'll get into that in a minute. We'll talk about that while you're thinking about your BJJ match. He's always a
match is probably really more of like 2 matches back to back at a tournament. Talk about progression, everything too. My first real defining moment was probably winning my first Pan Am championships at purple belt, and I beat Zach Maxwell and JT Torres back to back. And many don't know. Everyone knows JT now because he's won ADCC twice and everything.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know Zach Maxwell. But man, Zach was probably one of the toughest, strongest little individuals that I ever had faced. And so beating both of those guys was like my first real defining moment that I had taken what I had learned from wrestling and I have now be able to apply it to grab. Because he smoked me for the most part, throughout that first match that I had with him. I escaped 9 omoplatas. And I was losing by 11 advantages. And I found a way to hit a sneaky inside trip at the end, and beat him. And then I beat JT Torres in the finals by takedown as well. But then probably the next big defining moment was my first world title that because I faced Carlos Holanda in the World Championship finals. And in a match that I really thought, I was winning the entire time on the scoreboard. For some reason, somehow I was losing. And I've watched the match 100 times over since then, and I still just can't see how I was losing that match or whatnot.
But it happens.
Exactly. Well, and I got a lot to say about that as well. But but the other real defining match or moment for me was at black belt was when I beat my match with Tanquinho in the first round of 2013 ADCC because that was hard for me. No, I remember being in the hotel room and hearing that I was going to face Tanquinho in the first round, because a lot of people forget this. Tanquinho's last 2 wins before that tournament, he beat Cobrini and Rafa Mendes back to back.
Oh man,
I was like,
that's legit.
Yeah, and I just couldn't imagine how it was a first round matchup at ADCC. Yet there it was on the brackets, because I don't know who makes the brackets.
Yeah.
And that's another story in and of
Yeah,
itself.
yeah. That's another one. We'll get there.
So that was, I started to play head games with myself. But when we all went to weigh in, that first initial weigh in, dude, I saw him for the first time, and he just gave off this vibe, the weight cut was hard. He didn't look like super vibrant, ready to be there or whatnot. And it just supercharged my own mindset. I was like, I'm going to
Because you started to believe.
I started to believe. And because I remember, like, the night before here, and I had to go against Tankino, I was just like, I was already like 70% defeated mentally, because he had just beaten Cobrini and Rafa Mendes back to back. And I was just like this is going to be how it's going to turn out again, and, but then I saw him, and I saw his demeanor, and I saw his actions. And I was just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I found a way to make weight. And, the rest is, so for that was another, like, probably one of the bigger defining moments of my career.
That's awesome. Now, Justin had a quick question, one of our students, and he was like, he said his biggest concern is about just not performing at his best. And he was asking about habits and rituals that you kind of run, before a competition. And, so how structured are you on what happens, like the hour before, the 6 hours before, and the day before? Like, how much of that ritual is it like, I have to eat this, I have to have this movie, I have to have this music? How structured is that for you as an athlete?
Very. It's almost exactly the same. For me, it's a little different. And again, you have to go through the experiences to build up your own routine, because every athlete is different. Whatnot. For me, like, I normally couldn't eat the entire day, if not days before a competition. I could maybe ration out some water, especially my lips and my mouth. Sometimes I would just drink water, then spit it out. So that's me. Like, I don't believe in weight cutting. I don't have any one of my, athletes. I always recommend against it. All my kids, I do my very best to try not to allow it. I believe it's a very, very, very bad thing. But that was the road. Like when I was 4, I started weight cutting, because that was just how it's done here in Oklahoma.
It was the norm.
It was the norm. Yeah. It was just, like, hey, you're 2 pounds over for this tournament tomorrow. See the rest of those guys running with the sweater on? Here's your sweater. Just go start running with the rest of the guys till you make weight, and then you step off that scale. And I was 4, and they're like, hey, go home and eat, just like mash up some ice and just sip on ice chips for 10 or 15 minutes, and then come back and weigh in tomorrow. That was how my life got started. So that's it. So I normally can't even eat. I love I love movies. So the movie, like, I don't have a specific movie, but I love watch any Marvel movie, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. So basically, would you say that your routine is one of almost like escapism, where it's all like, I'm not watching jiu-jitsu matches, I don't want to watch all these competitions, like, I just want to go off, watch a movie, just be away, detached? So you run a detachment game?
Yeah, absolutely. And then every leading up to the day moment, I so then I would step on the scale. I would do my best to get liquids, but try not to do it too much, which I wasn't always good at, which is why I was constantly sick. Like, my match with Megaton was after I weighed in, dude, I just pounded it,
Yeah.
And I got to that, and then I was so sick, and I nearly threw up in my match with Megaton. So
I'm glad that didn't happen. Well, I'm kind of on both ends, where I'm like, that would have been awesome, but that would have been terrible too.
No, it would have been terrible. Like for me, it would have been horrible, terrible, embarrassing. It'd be real bad, but I have a lot of mental self-talk too. Like, my wrestling coach used to say certain things to me before I would, before our team would walk out there, and especially me personally, before I would walk out there, and I just repeat what he used to tell me in my head. He was like, keep everything sharp, solid, smart, don't give anything up, take everything given from you. And you just keep pushing the entire time, go out there, give your absolute very best. It's all that can be asked, hold your head high when you walk off the mat, and if you gave your best, you'll know it. And we'll keep getting better from that. Someone beats us because they're better than us, we'll come back, we'll get better. You get beat because you psyched yourself out, or roll over or whatnot, then we don't get as much information back from that experience to get better from. So it's like, as long as you give your best, that's all that can be asked of you. And I just repeat those things in my head, keep everything sharp, solid, smart. Don't give anything up. Take everything given to you. Keep pushing the entire time.
Yeah.
You'll break them or whatnot. And the very last thing that I say, and I kind of got away from this, but to be honest, it's still really kind of there. I started this in high school. We used to, like in high school wrestling, you'd walk into the table and you check in, tell them, hey, this is who I am. And then they, okay, you're red or green, walk out on the mat, put your band on or whatnot. When I would walk out on the mat, I would look back at the crowd and I'd be like, watch this.
Right. Yeah. Well, man, I can remember, because, a lot of my, because most of my competitive experience was, MMA and Muay Thai. And, I did some Jiu Jitsu competitions as well. But they were just never as much as my passion as like the striking arts were. But I can remember my first MMA fight that was in front of a bigger crowd down in Louisiana. It just, it was like an arena type thing that they got a good deal on. But there's a lot of people there. And I can just remember the energy of the crowd, like kind of fueled me up a little bit, and I was like, oh man, this was powerful. And it kind of influenced me a little bit. And, I had a couple fights after that where then I started looking for that, where I would kind of look to the crowd and just kind of take in that energy, and it's hard to explain. And, but there's energy there. Just like, when you fought MMA over in Oklahoma, you're the local guy. People know who you are. There's a lot of energy at those fights, and that can fuel you up sometimes. But then there's the other side of it whenever the crowd's excited, not for you.
Yeah.
So then you're the underdog battle, and you got to have a plan for that too. So you can't depend on like this, oh, the crowd gives me energy, because sometimes the crowd is not giving you any energy at all. And they are like, yeah, you're going to lose.
Back at the crowd too. Like one of my very first jiu-jitsu tournaments as an adult blue belt, I went out there and, that was back when, because I started training jiu-jitsu in 1998, and so I'm talking like, maybe 2000, it was probably a tournament in 2000, one of Carlos Machado's like Winter Wars, I would go down there and I went out there against this guy, and I had 8 years of wrestling. By that time it was even more. It was like 14, not 14. I had about 10 years of wrestling under my belt already. So I went out there and we got to the edge of the mat because I was kind of backing him up. He was trying to pull guard and I was trying to stay far enough away so that he couldn't pull guard because I wanted my takedown points, Yeah. And so kind of like playing the edge a little bit, and I snapped his head, shoved him, knocked him like 5 feet, off the mat, almost into the stands on the hardwood gym floor. And I did my normal response. I ran right back to the center, looked at the clock, looked at the time, got set or whatnot. And the whole place is booing me.
Yeah.
And it was because what I just did was like 100% acceptable in wrestling.
Yeah. I followed the rules.
Yeah,
Why are you mad at me?
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And people were like booing me and like didn't want me to come back or whatnot, and I did not have the maturity that I have now. I taunted crowds back,
Yeah.
And that's who I was, because I just didn't understand. I didn't know, and I didn't know why everyone was mad at me. All my life I had been told that was the pinnacle of like what you do in those moments. And that's But I got exactly the reaction I wanted. Guy got all, what did he do? He came back, he came at me, and I blasted him with a double leg and put him right on his face, like up and down. He got some frequent flyer miles or whatnot, So like I got the response I wanted, and I didn't understand, and I don't mean to be mean right now, but I didn't understand the ignorant masses watching.
Well, it's really more of just the maturity of the crowd and the sport at that time.
Exactly.
Would probably be a better way to put it, because it's very true. Because I can remember running into the same issues where we'd go to a jiu-jitsu tournament and they didn't understand the rules. And I would be so frustrated, and I'd be like, how do you guys not understand, because if we're going to go no rules, which, you know me, man, I'm an avid fan of like, I don't like being constrained too much, but I also understand that being a professional in anything means you can operate within a rule set. And if you're going to compete and have fun, you got to be able to have the skills to where we can run this rule set, we can run this rule set or that rule set. Like that's being a professional and a higher level competitor. So, that's there.
The way that I was brought up, again, like never settling for giving less than your best. Like I don't approach anything without like everyone used to always like, and even at times people tell me now, like, dude, it's just like a little local like AGF tournament. Like, you know, like, dude, you're out there with a job to do. Like, don't give me the excuse of it's, hey, you know what? It just, you know, it's a little, you know, podunk tournament out here in Oklahoma City or whatnot. It doesn't matter. No, absolutely not. Like, you're in that moment. You should be working to give your very best. Like one of the things that I do as a coach, I reread AGF's rule book before the night before every tournament. That way, when I go, I know the rules better than 99% of the refs, you know?
Yeah, and you're making sure you don't.
You should be out there giving your very best.
Yeah, it's making sure that you're not breeding complacency with your athletes.
Right.
You know, because if they will compromise their desire and perseverance because you give them a qualifier, oh, well, it's only this, so that makes it okay. Then that opens the door and it starts to grow, you know, and then whenever they're in another moment where it's, you know, AGF Nationals, well, it's a little bit better still, but, you know, it's not the World Championship, so then it grows a little bit more. Well, then they go to an IBJJF Houston, and they just emotionally can't get started, you know, like it, because you're not saying that it's not okay to lose. Like, of course it's okay to lose. You're saying it's how you lose or how you win. Like, it's the way in which you approach that moment.
And it's not the athletes, it's the table workers, it's the reps, whatnot. Like, dude, don't approach this like, oh, it's just some little local AGF I screwed up, you know, oh, well, no big deal, you know? We're like, no, dude, like you are messing with, like that might be the epitome of that athlete, like what they're able to ever do in their career and how that might even affect them. Like, one, what they're going on in the sport and the art, and two, how that might even affect their lives, you know? Like, and too many people are far too complacent and just being like, dude, you should just let it go, whatnot, you know? I mean, at the end of the day, like, I can or whatnot, you know, but in that moment, like, I'm one, going to give the best for my athlete because that's my job as a coach. And number two, I will never it's not in me to give less.
Yeah, you're wired that way. Like, I mean, you are hardwired for excellence in everything. And, you know, and over the last, you know, 10 years or so of us hanging out and being friends, it's like, you know, that's one thing I've learned is your struggle is usually comprehending how people can look at something as not approaching it in excellence. You know, like, how can you not approach everything with excellence? And, you know, because that hyper focus and being around some higher level athletes, man, you guys are all wired the same. Like, man, I mean, you and Ryan and George and all my buddies, like, that are just high level achievers, man, you guys are a very unique breed. And I'm just a case study worker, just trying to, like, you know, I'm just looking for signs and just seeing some congruencies of, like, man, you know, because there's excellent information in there, because what you're really talking about is athletic programming. I mean, just like if you pick a workout for an athlete, you pick a psychological play for an athlete, you're trying to program the athlete so that they respond the same way every single time, and they never backtrack, they never give, they never you know, let their will break. Like, it's always one track. And so as a coach, you're trying to recreate the exact environment that you want them to win at the highest level all the time.
And why?
What do you mean?
Why?
More specifics. Why? What?
Why is that important?
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, and that's where, when you're competing at the highest level, you're winning by millimeters. So
yeah,
I would,
but so yes, but why is that important? You know, oh, it's just jiu-jitsu, it's just a sport, it's just grappling, like, you know, yada yada. How, like one of my favorite movies is Coach Carter, and he said he demands the same excellence. He says the keys to winning in here are the keys to winning out there. And that's something else I tell my students all the time too, or whatnot. You develop that attitude of excellence in here, where you get like a quantitative, like, you know, or a certain amount, percentage of like quantitative data, or data that you can, like, you know, bam, I'm getting these wins, I'm getting my hand raised or whatnot. You will take that excellence and apply it to everywhere in your life. And you want to do great, amazing, you know, incredible things, as opposed to, you know what? That was just, you know, it's some little AGF tournament, no big deal.
you know, I can remember when I was coming up, when I was younger, I trained with this guy, and his strategy was anytime that he lost, he would justify it with an excuse. I can remember this being a teenager. I mean, you know, but he wasn't a high level athlete. He didn't know any better. He just found a way for him to cope with it. And for him to cope with it, he had to justify and make up some excuse anytime things didn't go his way. And he was really trying to help me, like because we were both kids, and he's just like, man, this is what I do, and that did not work for me. Like
Yeah.
that strategy. I don't feel like high achievers. That's definitely not congruent with that. But when you got a couple teenage kids, don't know any different. But I can remember that moment of like thinking, well, I'll try that. Yeah, that didn't go well.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at this, is because you're trying to recreate it. Here's something so funny. I saw this workout online that some martial arts school posted, or somebody, and they were doing squats. And when they would go down on the squats, they would touch the ground with their knuckles. So they'd be here and they do air squats and they drop the hands, touch the knuckles. And it was just making me cringe, because when I train fighters, or anybody for anything, I very much adhere to any movement you do, even if it's an attribute development or something that's trying to be a transitive property. I try to keep it as close to whatever, sport you're in. So like if you're doing striking arts, we try to do everything with our hands here that we possibly can. Like I don't need to reach down, I don't need to reach up. Like it's just, keep them here. And it was so funny because I'm so wired for it, because every time they did it, I could just feel myself like, ugh, ugh. It hurt me, on the inside. And I was like, this is how Justin Rader lives every day.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. It's tough. So jiu-jitsu was fun.
Yeah.
MMA was fun. So on the MMA thing, do you feel like it was just too late in your career, too rough on the body? Was it just not your thing? Like for me, like I love MMA. Like that was always my favorite. Like the competitive juices for me were just, I just can't replace it very well. But that was my thing, especially that in Muay Thai. I don't know. I always loved that. So for you, what was the deal with MMA? Was it a little bit like late in the career, body couldn't handle it, wasn't as interesting as you thought it was, wasn't worth the damage? What was kind of your perspective on that?
I really, really like the fact that I gave myself that experience.
Yeah.
I denied myself the experience of college wrestling. So I'm glad I did not deny myself the experience to fight, because I would always be wondering, what if? So I'm very happy for the experience. To be honest, like I might even very well still be fighting today. There are a lot of different reasons as to why I stopped fighting.
I hate to interrupt, man, but like every fighter I know, man, that is like, well, I mean, I might fight now.
Yeah.
It's always on the table, man. It's always on the table.
For me, dude, I want to return to professional grappling. I have reasons why, good thought out reasons, I think.
What about MMA? So
I would love to return to MMA as well, but there are definitely reasons and things of, again, why I don't. In fact, I spoke, I had a pretty in-depth conversation with Ryan Hall about, and what I love about Ryan has never told me like, dude, you should do this or you shouldn't do this. Ryan is always like, here are the pros of this, and here are the cons of this, and make your own decision.
He's very analytical, like no prideful ego. His interest and influence is like zero. He's all like, I will give you whatever information I have and whatever you request of me, and whatever you do is irrelevant to how I feel about myself. Like, I mean, it's just so much, solidarity with his confidence there. He's a unique cat. I see why you guys are friends.
Yeah.
Well, so on the MMA thing, I know that starting the school, you run the academy and that absorbs time. But do you feel like if you had to choose, you could only choose one, would it be professional grappling or professional MMA?
That I could return back to?
Yep, that you can only go back to one, and that's all you're going to get to do.
It'd be mixed martial arts.
It'd be the MMA. How come?
You get a more real feeling of where you really actually stand. Where I act, because I'm okay if it's first or last or somewhere anywhere in between or whatnot, as long as I'm giving my best. I really, really love knowing that, like where I really stand in the world, and I'm very transparent about that. I won 2 Nogi world titles, but let's just be really real about this or whatnot. Cobrinha and Rafa Mendes were not in those divisions, and they were still around and still current during those times. I always offer those, like, because I'm very, like I said, I have nothing to hide. I'm very, like, during my time, I consider myself where I was able to get to in the rankings or whatnot. I was the number 3 ranked grappler in the 145 pound and under division in the entire world. You know, I was able to win 2 world titles during my time, which I don't look at as like, you know, oh, well, you know, those 2 weren't there or whatnot, you know, because like every, you know, it's an arbitrary moment and point in time, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
So I don't really look at, so I would return to fighting because it's just a little bit more real as opposed to just grappling, which is one
almost like it because of
artist.
I kind of almost like it because of like the ADD aspect of it. Like there's just so much going on. It just mentally keeps me busy. Or I'm like, oh, he's punching me, he's kicking me. There's knees and elbows and takedowns. There's a wall over here.
But one big reason I don't return is I think, and this is a theory, I don't really know or whatnot, but the constant weight cutting that I have put on my body since age 4 is very, like, had I not started weight cutting until I was in my 20s or whatnot, I don't think it would take the toll on my body that it does. It is, but especially when I got to like 28, 29, and definitely when I was 30, dude, it became a real struggle. And
your body changes as you age. You know, me and Bruno Bastos were talking about that, which, you know, you guys are buddies too, and we go way back. But Bruno was talking about how, you know, because I said there's shelf life of an athlete, and he's like, that's a good point, you know, because your 20 to 28 shelf life is a lot different as far as your performance of usually, you know, you're fast, you're strong, a lot of eagerness. But then in that later 20s, early 30s, that's when you really get like that rigidity, that muscle maturity, but that makes the weight cut a little bit harder. And of course, anything after 35 is just kind of really conditional on the individual and the genetics, but it's just a different game.
yeah,
And some people, it's hard for their game to prolong. So like, you know, one of my other buddies, George Soteropoulos, that we're going to talk to him next week. And, you know, and we're pretty tight as far as a UFC athlete. His game complements his aging because he's a pressure player. You know, like he comes in with the boxing, gets the pressure, and he's a hold and damage. Like, so his game works very well longevity. Like he could come back right now and be competitive. Because, man, I'll tell you, like I trained with him last year. That dude is still an animal at 40 years old. Like, I mean, he was just putting me under the table, smashed all the guys. And his strategy as a competitor fighter, like it complements your fast twitch maybe being a little bit slower, or you having to just outrun them on everything that they do. And so I think that your strategy stays with you well with the age because, you know, it's a feint to a solid shot top control. Just like what you run in BJJ, you know, that strategy complements the aging athlete much better than whenever, you know, like Chuck Liddell. You know, Chuck's style was very counter punch, step back move, you know, like I was just a little bit faster, a little bit better timing. And then as he aged, you know, that part of his body started to struggle a little bit. And then that, you know, started creating some different results with his victories and just taking too many shots, because as we age, the strategy and the tactics get way more important. So with me saying that, what tactics do you feel like that you now run as a seasoned black belt world level competitor? What tactics do you feel are kind of like smarter than the game? You know, like, man, do this so that you don't get caught having to mess with this part of the game the whole time. Is that question clear? I mean, it's kind of a little bit vague.
Yeah, no, I would say it's a couple different things, but I understand distance and patience so much better than I used to. You would be amazed at the number, like I just started running, like especially in training, which is where, you know, you should do it or whatnot. I just started running experiments. The number of times I've been able to escape things by doing absolutely nothing started to really astonish me. And I started to understand most people don't know when they should stop and not move and wait for the other person. So I developed this concept that I teach my students of burden of movement, you know, and where it actually really be. And so the first number one most important thing you could ever understand and realize is distance. How close or far do I need to be in whatever position I need to be in? That will help tremendously, first, number one. But then just having the the patience to let things develop. Like I've had people on top trying to take my back as I've been in turtle or whatnot, and I've actually had like I've not moved, not made one single move. I've actually had people fall off the top.
Yeah, yeah. They kind of almost confound their own problem because they're too much haste. And so you know our little blue belt Rayon and his sister Helena, Rayon and Helena. You know, so Rayon, you know, he's got his blue belt. Man, he's like my weight class now. Oh my gosh, dude, he is like out for the kid. Oh man, it's just. But so I love having him as a training partner even more now, and even Helena because she's getting a little older, a little bigger, and so those kids now they're not even hardly kids. You know, they're teenagers about to go off and do college. But so Rayon, he struggles with that sometimes. Where man, he will blow past guards, do amazing position movements. You know, getting out of spider guard and all this, and then there'll be like a hesitation where he won't hold the position long enough because he's like, I need to keep moving. Because he spent his whole life being a little guy like me, where like usually the answer is keep moving because people are smashing you.
Yeah.
But now he's in a position where like, dude, you're in full mount. Like you have him side mounted. You don't need to like you're done. You're done. Stay there.
Yeah.
And,
like let their movements show you where you need to go. You don't always have to be the one forcing and creating or whatnot, you know, like you will wear yourself out. You will get yourself in bad position. You will get yourself in trouble and you'll lose matches. I have watched so many people, Tusa, you remember Roberto Alencar, Tusa?
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
He's the number one. Like, I'm sorry, but like, you know, I mean, and I think he won a couple world titles too. But it's just like, dude, I think he could have won so many more world titles had he just slowed down and stopped moving sometimes and just realized, hey, like, and I had to go through this myself. I competed up a year ahead. I went ahead and competed. I had one more year in the juvenile division, and part of me like kind of wishes I could go back and take it when I was a blue belt at the Pan Ams back in 2006, because it would have been me and Kron in the finals. Of the
that would have been cool.
But I jumped ahead to adult, and I went ahead and entered the adult division, and I was killing this guy in the first round, 6-2. And there's 20 seconds left, and all I had to do was sit there and close guard. I just had to sit there and close guard, good posture. Yeah. But I couldn't stop my mind. And I just kept trying to pass. And all of a sudden the guy just let me pass. And I didn't really realize. I was like, oh, and I passed. Next thing you know, I got put in an upside down baseball bat choke. Yeah. And so I actually fell asleep on my feet. So I was like standing up trying to push him down and just fell asleep and fell over or whatnot. That guy went on to get to the finals, was winning in the finals, gassed out and quit and lost. And I should have won that year. And I remember watching that, and I was beside myself. And I was kind of a psychopath, but I was like beside myself with anger, hatred, and self-loathing. And I just couldn't believe, like that was my Pan Am gold medal. And I had to wait, or that was it was 2004. Yeah, I had to wait 3 more years.
3 years, yeah.
Then in 2006, I was in a bracket, like, because the sport started getting a lot bigger. My bracket was like 69 people, and I made it. I lost to Ryan Beauregard in the semifinals, who barely lost to Kyron Gracie in the finals that year. And so I got bronze. And so then it was the next year, my big breakout year, when I finally won it as a purple belt. But that was one of that instance was huge for me. And again, the only way to get it is the experience is trial by fire. It has to actually happen to you, you know?
Right. And that goes back to exactly what you talked about in the beginning, you know, and this is something that with competitors, there's the physical attributes, you know, like there's like those ingrained, the genetics of, you know, how are you built, what's your height, your weight. And then there's, you know, the physically trained attributes that you develop as an athlete with your strength conditioning, cardio. And then there's like that psychological aspect, because most of the athletes that I see that struggle or come up short, they usually don't have technical problems. Like, I mean, small ones, but it's usually not like, oh, I don't know that move, or I don't know what to do in that position. It's usually an execution of that where it goes back to timing and distance management, just like you said, because if you jump the choke too early, the timing is off, the distance wasn't right, the chin was down just an extra inch, like, you know, there's all these factors, and you can take it into striking as well.
If you're trying to force it, you're using energy, and now you're fatiguing yourself. Why?
Exactly. And then so the gas tank gets down. So I think that correlates into what you're saying. And then as a coach, and for people to help understand that, you know, people get worked up at tournaments and things of that nature, especially when they're looking at the big picture of, you have to repeat this behavior a million times before you can do it at the highest level. And so we need to be recreating that as often as we can. And every chance that we lose that opportunity is frustrating, because that's a rep that we don't get back from that entire weekend. And
Well,
that's where it feels like a waste of time.
you can condense it too. Condense it to just that tournament. You're probably not going to have just one match. You're probably going to have 3 to 4 matches depending upon your bracket, you know? So this was another thing that I learned. When I won my first world title in 2007 in purple belt, I beat Zach Maxwell in the finals again. And going into that match, I remember my semifinals match, I went out there first, and I went out there and I was going against this like judo player who stood straight up, and I low level him twice like that. I mean, in the first minute and a half, I had 4 points, you know?
Yeah.
I just coasted and cruised, ran. I took all my, I was being smart, you know? I took my stalling warnings. I got 3 stalling warnings in that match because I got the warning, I got the minus advantage, I got the minus 2 points, which took them like 5.5 minutes worth of time to call. So there was only like 2 seconds left by the time it was over, and I won. And I just cruised and chilled the rest of the time, you know? And how does everyone look at me? Like I used because I don't understand people sometimes in this culture, but someone online once called me Justin, I run from BJJ Rader. And I just get the biggest kick out of that, because Zach Maxwell went out there and just, you know, because sometimes dudes that aren't as good as you are still tough to tap. And dude, Zach was just going balls to the wall hard with this dude. And after about almost 6 minutes, finally tapped him. So his match was 1 minute less, but dude, he expended himself. And I remember, because I was sitting right there mat side watching, I remember watching him walk off, and I remember just some of the heavy breaths, you know, go over there, hand his arm, massage his arm a little bit or whatnot, you know, like, because the forearms, you know, burned out. Because this dude, you could see it. He knew he was going to lose in the first couple minutes to Zach. Like, it was already over.
No, and it goes back to, you got to be a tactical player.
We walk off, and it's just like, okay, how much time before the finals? Oh, well, you guys have 14 minutes. Zach only had 14 minutes to recover, and I had 14 minutes to recover, and he was spent, and I had like an 80% filled gas tank. Like, I had an advantage just from the get-go, just because I went out there and I didn't try to tap this guy. I was like saving it for the final, because I won the match in the first couple. Same as him. He should have just, maybe he should have just coasted and maybe had more energy in the finals.
Well, it goes back to, like, if you're there to win the game, because it's a game. It is absolutely a game, and it's no different if you're playing like a video game, you know, on Nintendo or something like that. It's like, there's ways in which you can win that game that may not be as fun as other things you could do within the game, you know. But it's like, do I want to win or do I not? And that's the tough thing, you know, where people get into the
skill too. You have to also identify which game you're playing. Are you playing the finite game? Or are you playing the infinite game? We are all,
it's like speeding tickets.
No, that's a totally different story. They're traffic awards, Caleb, you know? But which game are you playing? Are you playing the infinite game? Well, we all are actually playing the infinite game. Most of us don't really know that, and and as infinite game players, we decide at which points in time we want to spend time in playing the finite games of the world. And so, being able to identify which game you're playing as an infinite game player, and when we interject in the finite, are you an infinite game player or are you a finite game player or whatnot? You know, and the differences between those two will help give you a very real world picture and life lesson as well.
And I think that's where, like, as a coach, that like becomes our job, is trying to help people understand like what game they're playing, and to see that, because that's one thing that I have over the years, many times I can feel my short-sightedness sometimes. Like, I can feel my ignorance where I'm like, I know that I can't observe everything that's going on right now. You know, and that ticks me off, because I can, you know, because it's like, I know that I can see more and learn more, but there's this so little bit scientific, you know, there's this stuff called myelin in your neurons that like helps speed up the electrical, you know, impulses. And we've talked about this before, where like I can feel when there's a myelin shortage, I'm like, I need more of this stuff so that my stuff will connect, because
more omega-3s in your diet.
Yeah, exactly. More
DHA to help those myelin sheaths. Docosahexaene.
That's it. And it goes back to like, that's how the 1,000 rep movement theory got started, you know, and the more they study it, they're like, no, man, there's physiological changes in your brain that occur by doing those movements that literally help you fire the electricity faster, you know, but then there is just the comprehension of like, you know, the intentionality behind it and stuff like that. So now lastly, you and your family are really tight, you know, and I was going to tell some mama stories because, you know, Mama Rader, she don't play. Like she,
No, it's not.
no, she is very to the point. This is how it is. So real quick, your favorite story of mom being this is how we win at life. We don't accept failure. Give us a quick story whenever it was like, man, mom just laid it out and this is what happened. That's not too embarrassing because, dude, don't get us in trouble. Like, that's the last thing I need is my phone ringing with her calling me.
Right. I'll give you this story because it was just such a monumental moment in my life. And this is my own personal story. This happened to me. I'm not saying that this is, you know, I'm not saying, you know, you need to be this way. This was just, this is where she really instilled, like, at no moment in time, you never give less than your best. So I did a lot of things when I was, I played just about every sport you can imagine except hockey and basketball. I did baseball, track. I was on a swim team, a competitive swim team for 3 years. You know, like I said, I started with gymnastics. I did Taekwondo. I did Kyokushin karate, which I have a brown belt in. You know, wrestling, Jiu Jitsu. You know, fought mixed martial arts and whatnot. But anyway, so I was on a competitive swim team, and I got picked up from school one day, and we were driving a competitive swim team. And then I would, because I had competitive swim team, and then I would have either wrestling or jiu-jitsu practice afterwards, because I did both. And so I remember, and then like once I got like most of my life growing up, like when I was a little kid, like I back in the days when you could do this, I would walk home from school.
Yep.
And you know, I usually had like 20 or 30 minutes or whatever, and then I would get myself ready. I'd get all my, you know, put everything in my bag, and we would go to Taekwondo practice. And I would do Taekwondo practice. Well, like I said, wrestling, because Taekwondo practice was only down the road.
Yeah.
It was far off. But wrestling practice after that was like, you know, 25-minute, you know, 30-minute drive across town. So I didn't have time to change there. It was grab the bag, you know, change in the car, you know. Dobby! Where's Dobby? Dobby! I love Dobby. So I would change in the car. And then we drive across town. Once I got done changing, my dad would quiz me on like times tables, division tables, things like that, things that I was doing in school. And then my dad, they always liked me to be ahead, so they would quiz me ahead. Like, so I was doing like, you know, fractions, you know, multiplying, dividing, all that, like long before like I ever got to it in actual school. My parents just, you know,
right,
were just that way. But anyway, so I got picked up to go to swim practice one day, and report cards had gone out.
Oh.
And it was the first and only B that I ever made, and I got a B in science, and my mom picked me up, and she was just silent the whole time.
That's when you know.
And well, I can't remember exactly. I think I knew I had gotten a B, or maybe she told me. I can't remember exactly how that part of it played out, but I'll never forget when we pulled up to the YMCA, which was where the swim team was, and I opened the door, and she turned to me and she looked at me, and I'll never forget the look that she had on her face. But she said the words to me, "I don't ever want to see that ever again." And then I closed the door, and that was the last that we ever spoke of it, you know. The look, like I can't describe to you the look of just like complete disappointment, you know. And it wasn't because, you know, it was like being mean or harsh, or you know, like people I think have a weird idea of the connotation and perception of what help actually means. People think of like help as like, you know, like coddling,
consoling, sympathy, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And the you know, sometimes helping means hurting, you know? And so I'll never forget that moment, you know, how just the look on her face of just complete disappointment, because she knew I was so much better, and she knew that I wasn't giving my best. And for me, one, it took me a lot longer to really learn that life lesson of always giving your best. But I also I liked, I didn't like disappointing my parents. Like I wanted to make my parents proud. And I vowed to myself that I would never let that happen again. And so that would be one of the stories that I have to tell about
that's one thing I feel like that you're right about is like sometimes people just don't understand, like, criticism and feedback are usually there to drive performance. And, but people sometimes can't welcome that very well, like if you put them in certain environments, like if you're on the martial arts floor and coach comes by and goes, hey, your hand doesn't go there, it goes there. That's cool. That's fine. But you take them outside of that where it's like, oh, hey, you shouldn't communicate that way. You shouldn't say this, shouldn't say that, or you shouldn't do that. Then that's received completely different where it's like, it's an attack, this is trying to tear me down, a negative. And it goes back with communication styles of finding ways to communicate with that. But, your mom and your family and everybody's so supportive of you. You guys have a really good dynamic, and I've really enjoyed being a part of the journey and just getting to be a part of the family too. Because, you guys are all kind of in this thing. And
I have one more quick story along those lines, because my wrestling coach always caught a lot of flack for this too. So my wrestling coach, and it's just kind of funny that, my wrestling coach and especially my mother, had the same demand of excellence. It's just kind of funny how that dynamic worked out. Well, anyways, I was a junior in high school, and I walked off a match that my coach felt I should have done a lot better job in. And in that moment, as coach and student, so yeah, he was yelling at me. He had a few things to say to me as I walked off the mat. I was a junior in high school, so I had a few things to say back. We talked later, and that was that and whatnot. And I kid you not, I got called in a day or two later into the administration's office at the school, asking, and they straight up asked me, one, how I felt about it, and two, they're like, well, do you think is he mentally abusing you? And I just about had a conniption on them and lost it. I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, he's a coach and he's doing what he believes he has to do to make me the very best version of myself that I can be. Do I feel like, do I hold any ill will at all against him for the way he went about doing it? No, absolutely not. I knew how much my coach cared. And the only reason he did that was because he was so invested into seeing us become the very best version. And I just lit into this administration, quickly dismissed me and never spoke to me again. And there was some behind the scenes things, so I just, I can't comprehend, that kind of thing sometimes, like helping, I was just watching, one of my favorite shows is Dragon Ball Z. And
that's four references. You're getting over the limit.
I know, but it's so important, So like a father's training his son, and the son finally goes off on his father saying, you know what? I think my former trainer was right about you. You don't have what it takes to push me because you're too worried about hurting me, Yeah. And so helping doesn't always mean not hurting.
Yeah. No,
I'll try to sum it up.
Yeah. No, it's just tough because, when you're trying to perform on a super high level with anything, we respond to demands of us a lot of time as the achievers. But it's finding that communication method, because some people, some guys, they need the pat on the back. Some people need the slap in the face, everybody's wired a little bit different. And I think that's where coaches learn to know you and they know what drives you. Because I've had fighters that I got to get worked up in a good sweat before they get in there. And I've got other people that I'm like, hey, go do some yoga, put on your headphones and just kind of do your rhythm thing. And that's where our job as a coach is to cater. But yeah, I just, I'm glad you came and spent some time with us here on the internet since we can't train, because we're supposed to be training next weekend, but that's not happening. So, we'll get back to normal soon, and we'll probably do more of these and just kind of chat and catch up. And really appreciate you telling some stories and had a good time. You got anything you want to close with?
Yes, I do. Topic for next time.
Okay. Oh, gosh.
Tournament structure.
Okay, I will put that on the list so that we can block off an entire day for that one.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for checking in with us. You guys can find Justin Rader, like he's on Facebook, he's on Instagram, he's got Legacy Martial Arts over in Edmond, Oklahoma. So, you know, he's definitely tight in the Inferno family, but for everybody that's kind of out of the LDMA Inferno circles, what do you got for us?
Oh, I just want to say too, like, I can't wait to be back.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're going to have you here and
Location, like there, not like on here, but like actually there.
yeah. Actually where we can do some training, man. And it's coming soon. So yeah. As long as things are back to normal by Black Belt Conference, we're all going to be okay. We're all going to be okay.
Woo!
All right, Raider, take it easy, buddy. Have a good day.
You too, man. Thanks for having me.